The GS series of notebooks from MSI are their slim form factor models of their mainstream offerings. One of the main concerns that can arise from dropping thickness on a high-end notebook is cooling performance. The GS73VR 6RF Stealth Pro aims to provide desktop-grade power in a sleek and slim package without sacrificing frame rates due to thermal limitations. Let's take a closer look at just how well this notebook does at achieving that goal. Let's begin this review with a cursory overview of the dimensions and specs of the GS73VR. This 17.3-inch notebook is roughly 33% thinner than their Apache Pro lineup, with the max thickness coming in at only 19 millimeters. Packed within that space is an Intel Core i7-6700HQ processor and an NVIDIA GTX 1060 6GB GPU, 2 SODIMM slots for up to 32GB of total storage, an M.2 NVMe SSD drive, a 2.5-inch drive slot, and killer AC Wi-Fi with Bluetooth 4.1. The NVMe SSD boot drive is of the incredibly fast variety, coming in with 2.1GB per second read and 1.2GB per second write speeds. The 17-inch panel comes with a few different options. There's a 1080p IPS version, a 1080p 120Hz refresh rate version, and a 4K IPS 100% Adobe RGB panel edition as well. The model I received for review has the 1080p IPS panel, which provided plenty of color accuracy, great viewing angles, and basically no backlight bleed from what I could see. The 720p 30fps webcam is of decent quality, however the audio does sound like you're a bit underwater, although it is sufficient to get the job done. With regards to I/O, on the right there's a USB 2.0 port, a USB Type-C port which doubles as Thunderbolt 3, an HDMI and mini DisplayPort out for video, and the power input. On the left there's the mic in and hi-fi headphone out, triple USB 3.0 ports, an SD card reader, gigabit LAN jack, and the Kensington lock. Externally, you get the same gorgeous brushed aluminum that MSI is known for, a new logo on the back near the exhaust vents indicating which line of MSI notebooks yours belongs to, in this case Stealth, and the frame around the keyboard has some sharp angling as well as some inconspicuous air intakes to help with the cooling. The keyboard is another job well done by the partnership between MSI and SteelSeries. The keystrokes are firm, the 3-zone RGB backlighting looks fantastic through the half-translucent keycaps, and it still continues to be one of my favorite overall keyboards on a notebook. The touchpad, on the other hand, does not get my same mark of approval. The removal of the dedicated left and right click buttons is a bummer for me personally, but I've seen it done well before. Unfortunately, with MSI's firmware integration, I suffer from misclicks, no clicks, improper scrolling, you name it. Basically, all of the minor frustrations that come with not knowing if your finger is properly positioned when clicking show up in this implementation. And to add to my displeasure in this regard, although I'm not necessarily sure if it's a feature, but the entire touchpad will do a physical click basically anywhere. Say your finger is in the top right corner of the touchpad, you can physically click down, but it'll do a left click, not a right click, which is a bummer. You have to make sure you're in the bottom right to do a right click. Also, to add to the list of features that I would like to see implemented on the GS73VR, a one-finger hinge lift design. With the thin size of the notebook, it seems natural to do this, but unfortunately it leads to the entire notebook being lifted up off the table rather than the panel opening up. Battery life on the 3-cell 65 watt-hour lithium polymer battery managed to get just under 2 hours on the PCMark 8 battery life test, which is noticeably better than the GE62VR counterpart that I reviewed a few weeks ago. Now let's transition to the performance on the GTX 1060 i7-6700HQ setup. I'll get to the benchmark numbers in a bit, but I want to address the idea that I presented at the intro of this video. Do you sacrifice thermal performance to get this thin form factor? The answer is yes. In standard gaming, the GPU temp would hit 93 degrees, and the CPU would get up to 98 degrees, which would cause both of those components to thermal limit their boost clocks. And as far as heat dissipation through the notebook, another concern due to the thin frame, using the FLIR 1 that Wootware provided me with, you can see that the WASD gaming section of the keyboard hit roughly 50 degrees Celsius and up to 55 elsewhere on the keyboard. Kind of uncomfortable for gaming. I would highly recommend that if you want to get the best performance out of the GS73VR's hardware, you get a cooling pad, which kind of defeats the point of the small form factor, but would be necessary to prevent the thermal issues. Translating my downcast statement on heat output into frame rate numbers, it honestly isn't that much of a performance sacrifice compared to the GE62VR with the same model specs. There's roughly a 1 to 2 FPS loss in most games. You still get fantastic performance out of the GTX 1060 on the GS73VR, but it is slightly limited. The GS73VR is actually a frankly incredible notebook. However, it's also a notebook about compromises. Some of them make sense, such as trading thermal performance and a DVD drive for a thinner frame, but other sacrifices don't make that much sense, at least to me, like the removal of dedicated click buttons on the touchpad. What undoubtedly impresses me most about the GS73VR is what MSI didn't skimp on to make this notebook. Their keyboard is still world-class and beautiful. They give you 5 freaking USB ports, including the Type-C Thunderbolt connection, and you get both the mic in and headphone out instead of a combined port. In an era where companies are competing for ever thinner products and dropping ports and jacks left and right to accomplish that goal, the GS73VR stands out as an impressive testament that you can have your cake and multiple USB ports too. This notebook isn't flawless though. The touchpad drove me up a wall. The thermal issues on the keyboard made it uncomfortable for long-term gaming use, and the thermal limiting took the GS73VR a bit further away from the desktop performance marketing statement that MSI has been pushing so hard. But with even those difficulties, the GS73VR is an incredible choice if you're looking for a sleek and slim desktop-like gaming notebook. There is a price increase over the similarly spec'd Apache Pro brethren, but the engineering that MSI put into this notebook is worth it if you know you need this form factor. I personally would go for the cheaper and better cooled Apache Pro, but that's simply because I prefer thicker and beefier laptops. So that wraps it up for this review on the MSI GS73VR 6RF Stealth Pro notebook. Big thanks to MSI South Africa Notebook for sending it over for review. Like this video if you found it helpful at all, dislike it if you disagree with me or my conclusions. You'll find a link down in the video description to purchase this notebook on Amazon if you're interested. And while you're down there, leave me a comment as to what you think of the GS73VR. You can subscribe to stay up to date on all of my tech-related content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.